my first question to you guys is, how many of you guys don't know what a unicorn is in the financial term? Nobody's going to stand up, I think. So everybody knows that. How many of you guys have invested in a unicorn before it became a unicorn? So there's a few hands here. And how many of you have invested in startups that failed? Many times. So I've been searching for unicorns for the last 25 years, and I want to share with you a little bit of my learnings in this time, and tell you a little bit of the mistakes I did in the past. And so hopefully you can take home a little bit out of it. I know even most of you guys don't invest in startups. It's more like the bigger tickets. But startups is a hot topic nevertheless, and maybe some of those lessons even pertain to your business. So my name is Daniel Gutenberg. I started as a serial entrepreneur, started a few companies, and sold them, and the largest one I sold in the year 2000. It was called Gutenberg Communication Systems, but I'll come back to that later. I'm a partner at a local venture capital firm here called Venture Incubator. It's a 100 million evergreen fund, and we invest in life sciences and technology. And we have been doing that since the year 2000. So we're one of the oldest funds in Switzerland, and currently we are expanding our business. I'm also a member of Brains to Ventures. It's an investor circle in St. Gallen that operates in all of Europe. I was voted Business Angel of the Year a few years ago, and I'm in the board of several of the startups I invest in, but I'm also on boards of non-related companies. So my career started at a very interesting point. I used to be a surf instructor, windsurfing instructor in Hawaii, and my customers there were managers, mostly from big companies, mostly successful managers, because only successful managers would come to Hawaii and hire a surf teacher to get with them into the water. So at a very young age, I was 20-something, I learned that even such high position guys, even such important guys, when you go with them to the water and it's uncharted water they haven't seen before, and there's some waves involved, they have fear just like everybody else, and they just behave like everybody else when they're in fear. So that very early on taught me a very important lesson, and I'll come to that later. And I think that really was also decisive on my career path. So I started when I got kicked out of the United States because I was an illegal alien. I started a little company in Switzerland called Gutenberg Communication Systems. And one of my first products I imported was a portable hard disk that you could connect to the printer port of your PC. Those times, the PC didn't have USB and other things, so you had to connect to the printer port. And the 20 megabyte hard disk like this one would cost about 3,000-4,000 Swiss francs. So I had a really cool technology. I found that in the US, and I built up the business in Switzerland, and was doing the marketing, the support, and printing German manuals and stuff like this, and business was going through the roof. And one day I'll order again in the States, and the guy says, sorry, can't deliver, we're broke. Like, how can you be broke? I mean, business is going like crazy. And my guess was, I just do Switzerland, I do, 2% of his world market share. So the next day I go into the plane, I fly to New York, I meet the guy for the first time, and say, I don't understand, explain to me. And he says, well, Daniel, you were doing like 90% of our turnover. Okay, I had no idea. And then I decided, okay, I need to have at least one share of every company I deal with. So, at least the end of the year, I can see about the size and if they're going to survive, because, you do substantial investments to make the distribution happening. You want to know if it's worthwhile. So the next 3 companies I invested in, or I brought in as a distributor into Switzerland, were Netscape. And you guys are probably, some of you, sorry about that, old enough to remember. Usually when I tell that at universities, they all look at me, net who? Alta Vista, Intershop, and NetScreen. And luckily I had one share, or like a few shares of every of these companies before they became famous, and before they became billion-dollar companies, and some of them even more than billion-dollar companies. So over 25 years, I do about 5 investments every year. You can see I invested in more than 100 companies, and they're like, you know, this is only part of it. They're like all over the place. I'll come geographically back to you later, but also from what they do, it's very diverse amount of companies. So out of those 100 investments, 10 already today are confirmed unicorns. And they are, as you can see, mostly in US, in Europe, and one so far in Israel. And some of them are actually decacorns, $10 billion companies, like Netscape was when it was sold. Mobileye, this is actually an old number, was just sold a few weeks ago for $15.3 billion to Intel. I met those guys in the year 2001, and they told me, hey, we have this idea to use a camera to make cars autonomous, to make cars see the road and drive autonomously through the streets. And you have to imagine that 17 years ago, nobody was talking about autonomous cars then. So I met them through an extremely through research with analysis of all the factors and going through the whole market. And the truth of it is that my brother was going with his mobile home from Italy to Greece. And next to his mobile home was another mobile home with the two guys who started this company. And they were, started to talk on the ferry boat. And they told my brother that they were looking for money for their startup. And that's how I got to meet them. And they explained to me this little idea about this camera that makes car, gives the information as a sensor to the cars to drive autonomously. And so I called them. They actually called me from the boat, and I told them, "Come to Zurich and explain it to me again. It sounds really interesting." And this brilliant guy, professor, comes and tells me what he wants to do in very simple words. And that was very. I'm always very shocked if there is such intelligent people able to even convey a message easily so that I can understand it. So I invested in the company, and they went public like a year ago, and Intel decided to take them off the market for $15 billion. So NetScreen was a firewall company. When I met them, there were 7 people working out of a basement somewhere in California. I met them on a booth at the Comdex in Las Vegas. And Intershop was in Eastern Germany. When I met them, they just moved out of the church there because the guy with the priest was the only guy who could give them an international telephone line to do business. And Cedric here invested together. I was the only private investor together with, I think, your father and many others were invested in the company, but I was the only private one. I said, hey, I'm your distributor. I distribute your stuff. You need to give me some shares. And so I got a few shares. And it was crazy. It became more valuable than VW at the time of the internet hype in the year 2000. And for the first time of my life, I went to Helsinki in Georgia in Russia, and I knew there's no internet or telephone or any connection there. So I asked my banker, what can I do to make sure about this position? And he told me there's this thing called stop loss, you know. So you put a number, and you say if it goes below that number, the shares, then we just sell. So I said, oh, that sounds good. So I, took 20% under the price, and I put this sell mandate in, and when I came back, I was not shareholder of Intershop anymore. Luckily, because now the company trades at 5-6 million or something like this valuation. So, as you can see, you need a lot of luck in my profession. Facebook, of course, I have no idea if this number is correct, but it's definitely a decacorn. Became extremely valuable company, and I think will stay an extremely valuable company, and so on and so on. So how did I find them, and how did I choose them, and what are the indicators for me to find a good startup? And by finding a good startup, mostly it's finding a good person that can run this startup. So my indicators, when I meet them for the first time, I look by founders that are driven by impact rather than money. So what that means is I look for people that have a vision, that want to change something in the world. And they sleep, drink, and eat only what they want to change. So clearly the case for somebody like Mark Zuckerberg, who says, I want to connect everybody in this world. And to do that, I will also go and give everybody internet so they can use Facebook to connect. And I'm not interested on the monetary side. Huh? When Microsoft offered him $3 billion for the company, just a few months after he started the company, he didn't even spend a second on that offer. He wasn't totally uninterested. Huh? He came into the board meeting and said, well, I have to tell you, we got this offer, but let's get to serious business. And of course, the people in the board meeting said, hey, stop. I mean, $3 billion, that's real money. We should discuss that. And apparently, I wasn't in that meeting. Apparently, he said, that's a total waste of time. We have important business to discuss here. So, and you can feel that. If somebody really wants to change the world, I think you can feel that. I always only invest in companies that I can understand in a very short period of time. And that I did already before the internet existed, when I used to go to shows, to CeBIT and to Comdex. I used to walk through the floors of the trade show, and I would go and see every single booth. And if I can't understand within 30 seconds, I would not try to understand, because it's so incredibly important to spend time, and I tell that my startups all the time, to condense the message to what you do to something that you can do in an elevator pitch that you can tell in the elevator, because it's the only possibility that you can convey the message to your customers, but also to your partners, to the guys you're going to work with, and not least to your employees, and to employees you want to hire. So it's extremely important that you can explain in less than a minute what you do, and it's amazing. Most startups cannot do that. Most startups have not the ability to explain in a very short time what they do, and it is extremely, very difficult. I don't know if you know this saying from, was it Goethe, I think? I wrote you a long letter. I'm sorry about that. I didn't have the time to write you a short one. So it takes, of course, a lot more thinking to shorten that. I'm looking for winds coming from the right direction, so I will invest. I have a preference investing in stuff that's hype. That was, a few years ago, green tech, and today certainly is fintech or blockchain and stuff like this. Because if everybody is interested in the subject, it just makes it easier to find the employees, to find partners, the same story as before. Huh? So, and I'll come on my very last slide, I'll come to that, where I think the winds and the hypes are blowing right now. It's very aleatory, but I think it really helps to listen to what the market and what everybody is doing. I look for founders that have skin in the game. That is very important for me. That the CEOs invest themselves, and that it's not just a hobby for them, and that they really have an incentive to make this work. And I always look for orders of magnitude better products. I very often come across deals where they tell me, we have been in this industry for 10 years, we know all the customers, and we have been selling them a product that was such and such, but now my new product is, 25% cheaper and does exactly the same thing. It's a no-brainer. And I will never invest in something like this. I always look at stuff that is at least 10 times cheaper or better, usually 100 times cheaper or better. So I won't go for even a short deal because with 25% less and all the customers already, and that's not my interest. My interest is really something that is at least 100 times better, and the risk is zero, that when it comes out on the market and everybody would want to have that. So you have zero risk that you be able to sell it. The risk is that you never get to make that product because it's technically not possible, or it's too expensive, or some other factors make it impossible to get there. But in the very beginning, I look at stuff that will really be a big disruptor, and else I won't consider it. So what I see as the negative factors is if they need me. Obviously, and contrarily to many other investors in my field at least, I think I never built a billion-dollar company myself. So I'm not interested at founders that come and say, we need your help to do that. I'm interested in founders to say, you want to be part of the boat or not? So I really don't see that as a good factor if they think we can only make it happen if you help us with your connections, money, or whatever it is they want. I think they have to have their own conviction that they can make it. I don't want founders that live on high salaries because that might prolong the whole story. I think they have to be, in startups, they have to be motivated by the exit and not by the salary. And missing IT efficiency. If you want to build a billion-dollar startup, then you have to be super duper efficient. And I can tell that quite early on when I have the meeting. Do they come on the first meeting with 6 people? Are they? Is it super complicated to get a meeting, to make a meeting? Do they use electronic calendars? Do they use email efficiently? How do they organize themselves? You have to, of course, know exactly about your competition. It cannot be that, with a little Google research, I find some competitors that you don't know. You have to know exactly what is on the market. If I come out with a product that is 100 times better than what's there today, likely there will be some other disadvantages. What are the disadvantages? What are the advantages? Who else is playing? And who will be bidding against me? Because there's always another solution to the same problem. So you have to know exactly what are the options of your possible customer. So, and of course, the team is important. Good startups, or I should say differently, some Harvard studies have really shown exactly that if a team of 2 will be more successful than one alone, and a team of 2 that are complementary, usually business and technical skills, will fare better than just one of each. So that's also a big factor. So where do my deals come from? They come from the network, from my old investments, from my board colleagues in different companies. And And sometimes, but very rarely, especially now that I go on, very rarely from my brother going on a ferry boat. So mostly through the portfolio of companies. I always am involved in about 20 to 30 companies, which means there's probably 100 C-level people and board members that are in portfolio companies. And if I take their network of their people that they trust, because I trust them, then that's where usually the best inflow comes from, and that's where, of course, I like the most to get business plans the most. If somebody that I know tells me, you should really look at this guy, he is exceptionally good. So, what are the wrong criteria? Of course, hypes are important, I said, but on the other hand, you really have to be careful not to make an investment just because you don't want to miss the boat, because everybody is talking about the blockchain or everybody is talking about Bitcoin or green tech. It doesn't have to pressure you to do an investment in this. Don't lose the patience. Very often you can make good deals if you wait long enough, and Mobileye is one of those. I mean, when they came off the boat, they said in 3 years we're going to have autonomous cars driving around and we're going to sell the company for, $1 billion. And I said, well, it's going to be 5 years and I'm happy with $300 million. And the truth at the end turned out to be 17 years and luckily a little bit more money. The father instincts, I don't invest just because I have been in the distribution business into some distribution-related stuff, or because I'm already invested in some kind of a industry that I know very well. That's for me absolutely no argument to continue investing in that industry that I already know. I think that I try to completely not think about that. Because again, coming to what I said in the beginning, I don't want to be there to help. I just want to be part of a boat of a good captain that, or I should say maybe a rocket of a good captain that goes to the sky. Know your partners. And that's probably the right environment to say that. Some funds have a huge pressure to invest. They need to deploy their money, but you know that better than me. And sometimes your co-investors have a different agenda why they make an investment and why they are very hyped or very positive on an investment. And that agenda might be the pressure to deploy the money and to make the management fee. And the hardest, I think, and the most funny learning is the industry expert advice. So when you're looking for disruption, then I think it is very important to ask industry experts. And when they really don't like it, that's when you have to invest. So. And it's logical. I mean, you could have asked any industry expert in the automobile industry in Germany a few years ago what they think about an investment in Tesla, and they all will tell you huge stories why that makes no sense at all. And it's totally logical, because how can somebody from another industry be better than them in their own industry? And the same thing is when Apple came out with the iPhone, the CEO of Nokia very publicly and very openly said, those guys, those Apple guys in Cupertino, they really know how to do PCs, but they absolutely have no clue about telephones. So that's the best indication. When I 2 years ago, I had a brunch or breakfast with the CEO of a large bank, a large English bank, and I asked him what he thinks about Bitcoins. He had a red face and almost stood up in a one-to-one breakfast. I mean, he was kind of offended that I asked this question. And I decided the same day, now I have to invest in Bitcoins. And it was one of my best investments of the last 2 years, let me tell you. So how do you get started? You have to find the secret. You have to find something that you know or your startup knows and nobody else knows. So it has to be completely different. Huh? In the beginning of the internet boom, where I was part of, everybody was talking about time on the website. So it was a good thing the more you would spend time on the website. Yahoo would say, you know, my users, they stay so and so long on the website, much longer than on your website. And in this time, you could put in advertisement, and people would read the advertisement, and that was a good thing, and you could earn a lot of money because they would read a lot of new news on the website, and you could sell advertisement space. And then Google came around and said, hey, we have a website with actually no advertising, just a little box, and within 0.03 seconds, we get you off to another website that has nothing to do with us. That's our business model. And everybody was scratching their heads and saying, well, there won't be any advertising. I mean, how can you make money? And of course, they found the secret and you know, found out how to make a lot of money with that. I was the importer. I brought Alta Vista into Europe, and was selling Alta Vista at the time, which was 10 times better technology than Google was, but they didn't find the secret. So you have to have a little thing that you know, or that somebody can explain to you, that you know makes it you know, different than what everybody else thinks. At Mobileye, by the way, the secret was everybody was developing autonomous car syncing with either 2 cameras to get the distance, or a camera plus a laser, a camera plus a radar, or any combination thereof. And Mobileye was, and still is today, the only company that says, no, 1 camera is enough. And that's a huge difference, because on calculating power, on installing, on synchronizing the 2 informations, a huge difference. And that was their little secret. They said, I can do it with 1 camera. And Amnon Shashua, the CTO of Mobileye, said to me, listen, it's easy. When you close your eye, you drive cars, you still know exactly on 2 centimeters and 1 centimeter where you have to stop before you hit the wall. You know where the cars are, and you know all this stuff by experience. You don't need 2 eyes to know the distance. You just know it by experience. And this experience we teach our computer. And that's how he did his little secret, and that's how he became, which is unheard of in the car industry, to have only 1 supplier with a solution. Usually the car manufacturers can always, you know, start to bargain on different suppliers. So you have to get a good deal flow. I look at 500 companies every year, make 5 investments. So you have to look at a lot of stuff, but I'm sure you know that. You also get inundated with deal flow. You have to know the reasons for your investment. So it should be very clear where the path is going and why you do it. And my worst investments were always when I invested in stuff that were near to my hobbies or my heart or something like this. I'm a pilot, a hobby pilot, so I did some investments related to flying, and they totally flopped. Because I just thought it was very cool and I liked the solution, but I completely forgot that you also need a kind of a big market to make it fly, so to say. I got this next one from Warren Buffett. He says you have to pay somebody to discourage you, and he has to get money when you don't do the deal. And I think that makes sense. You have to have people around you that, and especially in the setup of venture incubator, it's a very good sounding board to have people around me that help me also to decline stuff and see stuff that I didn't see. And you need to be persistent. Sometimes the deals go, down rounds or difficult times in 2008, and if you really believe in it, then even in difficult times, I try to stay with the company and finance the down rounds, even when everybody else is saying we're not touching this anymore, and that sometimes turns out to be very good deals. So you have now all my my little secrets. I will tell you what I think right now is interesting, and that can change very often. Usually, end of the year, I spent some time doing a board meeting with myself, and I think about what could be interesting next year, and I come up with a few teams like this, but that's definitely not in stone. Shared ownership stuff, Airbnb is one of my investments there, and this is showing the path on where that can go to. But I think we will see a lot more shared owner stuff things. When I look at the Lake of Zurich here, the amount of boats that are on the lake, and the amount of boats that are used every year, and there's a huge discrepancy. It makes no sense at all. I mean, and the whole industry around it that is maintaining those boats, and that is doing all the insurance and all this work and all these costs for all the places and everything, this is absolutely crazy. I mean, if you could just say, okay, let's stop all this, by 100 boats, the best of every category, and all the boats owner can just use them, and they will be always ready for you to take in the best possible maintenance. That will cost much less than what the whole industry of boats costs, and give you a better value for what you do. So there's a lot of industries like this that will be disrupted at some point. Autonomous cars. What does that mean? What does that mean if going to work from 10, 15 kilometers outside the city is absolutely zero hassle, because a car comes, picks you up, and drops you off at work. And it's not even your car, you just pay for the travel, and the travel costs not much because there's no employee to be paid, and vacation, all this stuff. So what does it mean for real estate prices? What does it mean for real estate in general? If you sit on your terrace and you wanted a cold beer, and there's a drone coming and delivering a beer, does that mean that you still need a refrigerator? And people are laughing and think it's totally out of this world, but it actually isn't. A drone will come and will deliver a cold beer for less than $1 cost of flying the drone. So it will make your beer more expensive, just minimally more expensive. So will you then still need a kitchen? Will you still need a refrigerator? So I'm thinking a lot about those things. And I also actually have investments in autonomous drones companies. And the same thing for cars. It will change a lot, and it's not easy to understand what is it that will change, and what's the time frame that it will happen. Huh? So I always thought autonomous cars are going to come before autonomous drones, because I think autonomous cars are going to come in 2025. But actually now I find out autonomous drones is actually going to come before, and we're talking 8 years away. So it's very close already. Blockchain, cryptocurrency. We are very privileged here in Switzerland with our crypto valley. There's a lot of quite global things going on, only a few kilometers in the south of here. The Internet of Things. We're getting more and more things that are connected to each other. What does that mean? What are the risks? How do you mitigate those risks? Battery, solar at residence, when you become completely autonomous in your house and you don't need the grid anymore. What does that mean for, and you can do your work and your everything from at home. What does that mean for the job market and stuff like this? Smart home, I think that has never worked so far at all. But I'm expecting that the next 5 years will show real smart home technology coming onto the market, which really didn't happen so far. Everything that is labeled smart home really doesn't work at all. It's a catastrophe. It makes just hassles in your home more than anything else. So there's very good stuff coming out now, very, very shortly. And I don't know, maybe you guys have some ideas that you want to throw at me in which direction it goes after this speech. I'll be happy to hear that. And I think I'm over with my time. I have 5 more minutes, is that correct? Should we do question answer, or are we done? Or okay, well, anyway, so my last questions to you guys. When will you back a $1 billion startup? And when you do, please give me a call so I can be part of this rocket. That will be a great pleasure for me. Thank you very much for your time.